He stepped off that bus with his duffel bag slung low and his head held high, metal still tucked in the side pocket, dust from Vietnam still clinging to his boots. He'd left with a rifle and a promise, came back with a limp and silence. No parade, no welcome sign, just the sun beating down on cracked Alabama pavement and the slow stares of people who never thought he'd return. This is Injustice Brown, and I'm Mark Joie. If you believe in the truth, if you believe our stories matter, go ahead and subscribe. And if you feel this one, leave a comment. Because what happened to Reuben Miles, it wasn't history. It was a warning. He was 28 when he came back, older than his age. Not just because of the war, but because of the weight he carried long before that. He had worn a helmet overseas, worn his country's colors on his chest, took bullets for men who wouldn't sit beside him back home. He thought maybe, just maybe, fighting for them might earn him a place with them. That maybe blood would buy dignity, but dignity don't come on credit when you're black in the South. He walked through the station, past the same wooden benches he'd sat on as a kid, marked colored. They'd been painted over now, but the ghost still lingered. So did the smell of tobacco, spit, and judgment. He took a breath and smiled anyway, because the mill had promised him a job. Old Mr. Lanford said it himself before Reuben shipped out. "You come back alive, son. I'll hold a spot for you." He said it like he meant it, like Reuben was family. And for a minute, Reuben had believed him, so he walked straight there, didn't stop by home first. His mother would have made him gumbo and told him to rest his bones. But Reuben had fire in him that day. Hope, that dangerous kind. The receptionist looked up when he walked in, blinked, then frowned like she'd smelled something off. "You must be Reuben," she said flatly. "Yes, ma'am. Came to speak with Mr. Lanford." She disappeared behind the door, then came back with her eyes a little colder. "He's busy, but I was told to let you know the position's been filled." "Sorry." Just like that. The words hit harder than any mortar round. "Filled. But he told me." "Sorry," she repeated, and turned away. He stood there a second longer than was polite, let the silence stretch like a wound. Then he nodded once, walked out, didn't slam the door, didn't curse, just walked. That night, he sat on his mama's porch, said nothing, just stared down the street at nothing. She brought him tea, kissed his forehead, didn't ask Dot because black mothers know. The next week, he tried at the post office. No luck. "We're not taking colored veterans right now." The manager whispered it like it was a secret. Reuben wanted to laugh, or maybe cry, but he just thanked him and left Dot. By the third rejection, it stopped surprising him. By the fifth, it stopped hurting Dot until he saw a white boy from town barely out of high school. Never served a day walking out of the mill in uniform. New boots, smiling. That's when the fire came back. One afternoon, he was driving back from the city, head held high, car clean, radio low when the flashing lights pulled up behind him. He wasn't speeding, not swerving, just existing. The officer leaned in slow, tapped the roof of Reuben's car like he owned it. "You lost, boy." "No, sir." "You driving kind of proud for somebody who don't belong out here." Reuben blinked, swallowed the anger like a stone. "I was just headed home, officer. License, registration." He handed it over. The cop took his time, checked everything twice, then tossed the papers back in his lap. "Don't make yourself too comfortable." And with that, he walked away. Reuben sat there a while after, car still running, eyes burning, chest tight. He hadn't come back to the same town. He'd come back to the same truth, only now it had better manners. It smiled when it hurt you, said sir while stabbing you in the back. He tried the church next, the same one he grew up in, but even there, the whispers followed that were changed him. Some said, "He's bitter." Others asked why he always looked angry. But Reuben wasn't angry. He was awake. He started walking everywhere, not because he didn't have a car, but because he wanted folks to see him, to remember that not all heroes wore capes. Some wore dust-covered boots and silence like armor. Kids would wave at him. Older folks would look away. A few white neighbors would, not politely, then clutch their purse or lock their doors when he passed. He wasn't dangerous, just inconvenient. A living reminder that this country breaks its promises and buries the bones. And still, he didn't fold. He trimmed his mama's hedges, helped neighbors with their roofs, tipped waitresses with what little he had. He didn't stop being good, didn't stop being human, but make no mistake, he was never truly welcomed back. He was tolerated, ignored, silenced, a ghost in his own home. And that, right there, is what most folks don't understand. The pain ain't always loud. It don't always wear a hood or carry a noose. Sometimes it wears a uniform, or a smile, or a handshake that don't mean nothing. But Reuben kept walking, because even ghosts leave footprints. The job wasn't glamorous. It didn't pay much, didn't come with a pension or a plaque, but it was something. And Reuben took it without complaint. Janitor at Hillside High School. He showed up every morning before sunrise, carried a ring of keys on his hip and a steel thermos that steamed through the cold months. He swept the halls like he was clearing a battlefield, not for himself, for the ones walking through it. The kids didn't notice him at first. Most adults didn't either. He was just the man with the mop, the one who disappeared when the bell rang. But Reuben saw everything. He saw how the white kids laughed louder, moved through the building like it belonged to them. He saw how the black kids walked smaller, shoulders curved and eyes dropped, not from fear of violence, but fear of being noticed, and maybe worse, being ignored. He cleaned up spitballs from the chalkboard, pencil shavings off desks, scrape gum off the underside of tables while teachers droned on about American excellence. Some days, he'd see a black girl get marked tardy for being 30 seconds late, while a white boy strolled at 5 minutes after the bell without a word. Some days, a black student would ask a question, and the teacher would smile like it was cute. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But Reuben never said anything. He swept. He nodded. He watched Dot. He started staying late after school, not because he had to, but because the silence helped him think. He'd sit in the library long after the last kid had left, flipping through textbooks, encyclopedias, newspapers, anything he could get his hands on. Then one night, in the dusty corner behind the librarian's desk, he found an old copy of the Constitution of the United States, and right next to it, a worn-out book on civil rights law. He checked them out, under a student's name, walked home like he was carrying gold. Dot, and every night after that, Reuben studied, read until the words blurred, learned what they never taught him in school. He memorized case law, court decisions, due process, learned how the game was rigged and how it could be beaten. He still showed up every morning like nothing changed, still nodded politely, still mopped the floors. But behind his eyes, the fire had shape now. One afternoon, he was changing a trash bin in room 212 when he saw it, a paper crumpled up in the can. Nothing unusual until he noticed the handwriting, neat cursive, tight paragraphs, the kind of writing that came from effort. He pulled it out, flattened it, read the title, The Power of Frederick Douglass, written by Andre Jacobs, 10th grade. Reuben read every word. It was brilliant, honest, proud. It spoke of struggle, strength, and silence that still echoed in the world around them. He looked up at the teacher's desk. The nameplate said Mrs. Haverly. He knew what had happened. Andre had probably written his whole heart onto that paper, turned it in on time, maybe even with a hopeful smile. And she didn't even read it, didn't even see him, just tossed it. Reuben smoothed the page again, folded it with care, put it in his coat pocket like a relic. That night, he didn't go home right away. He walked to the town library and sat beneath the flickering ceiling light, took out the essay, then took out a pen. He started underlining passages, circling ideas, taking notes not for Andre, but for himself, for what it meant. That was the moment something shifted inside him. Not rage, not revenge, something deeper. Direction. The town called him just the janitor, smiled when he passed, then whispered when he was gone, said things like shame, what the war did to his mind, or he was always a little off, even before Nam. But Reuben didn't care. He was building something, quietly. Brick by brick, book by book, truth by buried truth. He stopped going to the barber shop on Saturdays, stopped hanging out on the porch with the old heads. He spent that time reading now, taking notes, practicing how to speak with clarity, authority, precision. And the more he read, the more he saw the pattern, the quiet pipeline, from classroom to courtroom, from misbehavior to mugshot, from ignored to erased. And right at the center of it, silence. That's how they win. That's how they keep control. They make sure you're tired. They make sure you think you're alone. They teach you not to raise your hand, not to speak up, not to expect fairness, and if you do, they toss you in the trash dot just like they did that essay. But Reuben had pulled it out, held it up to the light, because the truth don't rot, not when you protect it dot. So he kept showing up, kept mopping floors, kept emptying bins. But now, he looked at every paper before he tossed it, every detention slip dot, every grade book left out on a desk. He was building a record, a case, a weapon, and no one saw it coming, because he wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic dot. He was deliberate dot, dignified dot, dangerous in the way only truth can be. And soon, they'd find out dot. It happened on a Thursday, late October, 1975 dot. The leaves were changing, but the town wasn't. The loudspeaker crackled right after lunch. Andre Jacobs, please report to the principal's office. Reuben was mopping the hallway just outside. His back stiffened, but his hands kept moving. He saw Andre walk past, shoulders square, chin up, trying to look unbothered. That boy always walked like he had a purpose, not cocky, just sure. Andre was 17, sharp, best math student in the school, could solve problems most teachers had to double check, but he never bragged, never needed to. He worked the shifts at the grocery after school to help his mom, studied at night, never missed a class, never caused trouble dot. So when they said he'd stolen something, Reuben didn't buy it for a second. Rumors spread quick dot. Mrs. Haverty claimed her watch had gone missing, gold band, family heirloom. She left it on her desk during her free period. When she came back, it was gone dot. No evidence, no witnesses, just a feeling. Principal Mathers said it was a matter of instinct. His words. Andre was the only black student in that advanced class. And just like that, they pulled him out, searched his locker, his bag, his pockets. Nothing. Didn't matter. He was expelled the next morning. No hearing, no phone call to his mother, no chance to speak, just gone. Reuben heard the whole thing go down from the janitor's lounge, teachers whispering behind closed doors. He always had that look, you know. Shame. He had potential, but, well, you never really know with them. Reuben didn't sleep that night. Sat in his room with the lamp on, staring at Andre's essay, the one he pulled from the trash months ago, still folded, still sharp. He opened it again, ran his finger across the handwriting. The great mistake is assuming silence is the same as peace. That line stuck in his throat. A week passed, and then the watch turned up, inside Mrs. Haverly's own desk drawer, tucked behind some paperwork, right where she left it. They didn't announce it, didn't admit the mistake, just moved on. Andre didn't come back, because once you're expelled you don't get invited back, and nobody said a word. Not the teacher not the principal not the school board, not even the black staff. Fear does that, makes silence feel like survival, but Reuben had reached his limit. He didn't yell, didn't slam doors. He just got to work. He bought a second-hand notebook from the general store, black cover, spiral spine, and he started writing names, dates, incidents. He wrote about Shonda Bell, who was suspended for attitude after raising her hand one too many times in history class. He wrote about Terrence Boyd, who was pulled out of gym and accused of cheating because he got a better score than a white student. He wrote about Andre. Every story, every pattern, every injustice that slipped through the cracks. He stopped just noticing. He started documenting. Some teachers noticed him staring longer than usual. Some tried to avoid his eyes, but they never said a thing, because to them, he was still just the janitor, still just the quiet veteran who mopped their floors and didn't make waves. But Reuben was learning how bias hides itself in policies, how racism gets polished until it looks like professionalism, how the word misconduct means whatever they needed to mean. And he started collecting proof. He'd overhear a teacher say something slick and jot it down the moment they walked away. He saw which students were punished for nothing, who got second chances and who never got first ones. He noticed which white teachers forgot to grade certain papers or lost assignments only from certain desks, and every time he wrote it down. He wasn't looking for revenge. He was building a mirror, one they wouldn't be able to look away from, because he knew something they didn't. Receipts don't rot. Reuben kept that notebook locked away under the floorboards in his room, alongside his war medals and a small box of letters from men who never made it home. And every time he felt tired, every time the weight of that building and his lies pressed down on him, he'd open that essay from Andre. and read that one line again. The great mistake is assuming silence is the same as peace. They thought they broke Andre. Thought they buried him in paperwork and shame. But all they did was light a fuse, and Reuben, he was done waiting. The court papers were filed. On a Tuesday. No press, no announcement, just a quiet trip down to the county clerk's office, where Reuben handed over a neatly bound folder, signed in blue ink, and walked out like he'd just mailed a letter. The lawsuit named 3 administrators to teachers and the entire Hillside School District. Not for back pay. Not for slander, but for discriminatory discipline, racial targeting, and unlawful expulsion of black students over a 10-year span. He filed it not for himself, but for them, for the ones they tossed, ignored, suspended, silenced. The kids whose names never made it past the attendance sheet. At first, nobody believed it. Not because the town thought it was impossible, but because they thought Reuben couldn't read. That janitor filed what? He doesn't even talk. Who's putting him up to this? The laughter came quick, loud, sharp, like breaking glass. The school board called it ridiculous, baseless, a stunt, frivolous litigation from a man with a chip on his shoulder. But then came the depositions, and the laughter started to fade, because Reuben didn't show up emotional. He didn't show up loud. He showed up prepared, in his Sunday shirt, work boots laced tight, notebook in hand. And when the lawyers tried to rattle him, tried to twist his words, tried to mock the way he paused before he answered, he didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't raise his voice. Just facts. Dates, incidents, patterns. You stated Andre Jacobs was expelled in October of '75. On what grounds? No evidence was provided. The watch was recovered from the teacher's own desk. Page 42, Exhibit D. You claim Mrs. Haverly threw away multiple essays. 3, minimum. I retrieved them. Filed copies attached. Exhibit F. He had the records. The names, the timestamps. The town called him a janitor. But he built the case like a damn lawyer. And when the school's attorney tried to have the case dismissed, citing lack of legal experience, the judge read the motion and denied it. Just like that. Denied. Suddenly, nobody was laughing. That's when the real pressure started. One morning, he came out to find all 4 tires on his car slashed, not stolen, not popped, slashed, deep and slow. 2 days later, a letter showed up in his mailbox. No return address. Drop the case, or you won't walk again. He didn't even tell his mother, didn't tell a soul. Just taped the letter inside his notebook and kept going. Then came the calls from church folk, people he'd known since childhood. Brother Reuben, now why you stirring all this up? Some things are better handled quietly. You making it harder for the rest of us. That one hurt. Worse than the threats. Worse than the rumors. Because it came from his own. People who should have known better. People who'd been hurt, too, but learned to live in it. He didn't judge them, but he didn't back down either. The next hearing, he showed up early, sat in the front row, alone. No lawyer. Just him and a box of evidence. He didn't need a team. The truth was enough. One teacher, under oath, said she never treated black students differently, never raised her voice unfairly. Reuben pulled out a written statement from a former student white who said otherwise, word for word, with dates. The court went quiet. The teacher looked down. Reuben just sat there. Still, solid. It wasn't rage that made him powerful. It was clarity. When they laughed, he didn't defend himself. When they threatened, he didn't hide. When they whispered behind closed doors, he knocked and walked in. And when that first judge ruled in favor of allowing the case to proceed to trial, you could feel the shift. The air got heavy. The board lawyers stopped smiling. The superintendent stopped showing up in person. And the town started wondering who, exactly, they'd been mopping around all those years. Because it turns out, the man they ignored had been paying attention the whole time. He wasn't angry anymore. He was focused. And focused men, especially the ones with nothing left to prove, are the most dangerous kind. The case didn't explode. It didn't make national headlines or end in a dramatic courtroom outburst. It just ended. In 1985, the school district settled. No press conference. No apology. No admission of wrongdoing. Just a check meant to make it all disappear. They offered tutoring programs, promised to review discipline policies, hired one more black teacher for optics. But no names were cleared. No children reinstated. And no one said the word sorry. That part still stuck in Reuben's chest. Because for 4 years, he carried the weight of that case like a stone in his mouth. Sat through meetings where they spoke about him like he wasn't in the room. Listened to lawyers twist the truth until it screamed. He never missed a hearing, never raised his voice, never took the stand with anything but facts. But when the settlement was signed and the ink dried, he wasn't celebrated. He was erased. They fired him 2 weeks later, said the position had been eliminated, budget cuts, efficiency, some bureaucratic lie wrapped in politeness. He knew what it meant. Word got out fast. Other schools wouldn't touch him, not even as a sub. Grocery stores stopped calling him sir. He'd walk into the diner, and conversations would stop, eyes would glance down, coffee would come cold. He became that man, the one who made white folks uncomfortable and black folks nervous. A reminder of what happened when you refused to stay quiet. Some parents crossed the street when they saw him coming, whispered to their kids not to talk to that troublemaker. But other kids, they ran to him, they called him Uncle Reuben. He started tutoring out of his own living room, math, mostly, reading comprehension, essays. He never charged, even when money got tight, and it often did. He never charged. He said, the system already stole too much from y'all. I ain't adding to the bill. He'd sit at the kitchen table with a pencil behind his ear, correcting grammar and handing out encouragement like candy. Not loud, not showy. Just present. Some days only one student would come. Other days, he'd have 5 around the table and another waiting on the porch. He didn't mind. He lived for it. He still walked with a limp or wound that never healed, right? Wore the same army jacket every day, sleeves frayed at the wrist, one pocket stitched back together with dental floss. He moved slower than he used to, but he smiled more, not because he was at peace, but because he knew peace wasn't the point. The fight was the point. Peace was for men who sat back and watched. Reuben was never that kind of man. He'd walk downtown and see a few of the same teachers who once laughed at him cross the street to avoid him. One even offered a fake smile, said, no hard feelings. I hope. Reuben just looked at him, didn't nod, didn't reply, just kept walking, because some things don't need forgiveness. Just distance. At church, they kept his name off the committee lists. To political, they said, to radical, but kids still sat next to him in the pew, listened when he spoke, and when he stood up to read scripture, the room got quiet, because even if they didn't want to admit it, they respected him. Even if they couldn't say it out loud, they knew. They knew what he did. What he sacrificed. And what it cost him. Late at night, he'd sometimes sit on his porch alone, notebook still in his lap, though most of the pages were filled now. He'd look out across the street, where kids laughed and played, and just watch. He didn't smile much in public, but out there, in that quiet moment when nobody was performing, that's when it came. Soft, real, a smile that said, I didn't win everything, but I didn't lose myself. Reuben died alone, in the small rented house he lived in for nearly 20 years. It was 1998. A heart attack took him in the early morning. Before the sun even had a chance to rise. No obituary in the paper. No grand funeral. Just a quiet closing of a chapter that most in town wished never existed. But that silence didn't last long. Weeks later, a woman named Mia walked into the Hillside School District's board meeting. Mia, once a scared girl who had sat at the back of Reuben's tutoring table, her hands shaking as she struggled with a math problem. A woman now, strong, determined. She held it, her hands a folded piece of paper, edges worn and creased. The last letter Reuben had written. No one in the room knew it existed. She cleared her throat and read aloud. The words were slow at first. Names dozens of them black children expelled without cause over 30 years. Names that had been forgotten, erased, silenced. The letter didn't just list names. It told stories in brief lines, who they were, what they dreamed of, where they were now or where they might have been. And then, at the very end, one line, just one, all I ever wanted was for them to be seen. The room fell silent. No rustling papers. No coughs. No shifting in seats. Only the weight of those words. The board members, men and women who had once brushed Reuben aside, they wiped tears from their eyes. Some struggled to hold back sobs. No one spoke for a long time. And in that silence, something shifted. For the first time, the town wasn't hiding from its past. It was looking at it. Really looking. And maybe, just maybe, ready to do better. Reuben never got a parade, never got a statue or a plaque. But on that night, in that room, he won something greater. He was seen die his fight mattered, his name spoken with respect, and the children he fought for they were seen to die because sometimes the loudest victories aren't the ones shouted from rooftops, they're the quiet ones, the ones that live on in hearts and whispered stories, and for Reuben, that was enough.